Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my summer anticipated releases. So today is June 16th, which is a lot later than I usually do my seasonal anticipated releases video. But if you haven't noticed, I haven't been posting a lot lately. My life's just been a little bit of a mess over the last month for various different reasons, and I haven't been reading as much as normal. I haven't been filming and editing and doing the things that I normally do. But this is always one of my favorite videos to make, so I didn't want to not make it. And I mean, the summer is 3 months long, so there are plenty of books that I'm going to talk about that haven't come out yet. Sorry if you can hear the lawnmower outside. I'm trying to wait until he's not right outside my window. So the months that I count as being part of the summer are June, July, and August. So today I'm going to be going over 15 books that are coming out in those months that I am excited for. And in case this is the first time you've seen one of my anticipated releases videos, just because I'm excited about these books coming out doesn't mean that I'm going to read them right away. Some of them I might, but this is different from a TBR. I also do seasonal TBRs, so I will be filming a summer TBR shortly. Hopefully it'll be up in about a week or two. But I just want to make that distinction clear. Just because I put a new release on my anticipated releases video doesn't mean I'm going to read it soon. I'm really happy to see that a lot of the books in this video are from diverse authors. I mean, I always try to include diverse authors in my videos, but I actually had put this list together, or at least started it, over a month ago before the Black Lives Matter movement became such a hot topic. I mean, obviously it's a movement that has been around for a very long time, but I just wanted to make clear that a lot of these authors were already on my list and they weren't there just because of recent or current events. Actually, a lot of these authors and books made it onto this anticipated releases video after I watched some of them on panels at the Social Distancing Book Fest. That was an online festival that my friend Bethany from Bookish Bethany had put together with a whole team of people. It was a really fun day, and if you missed any of those videos or you're interested in maybe hearing some of these authors speak about their books, I will link the playlist down below where all of those live streams can be found. Okay, starting with June. June was actually the month that I have the most books listed in, and obviously at this point some of them have already come out. The first book that I want to talk about is called Queen of Coin and Whispers by Helen Corcoran. This book is coming out on June 1st from the O'Brien Press, which is a publisher that I wasn't familiar with, and so when I looked into it, it turns out that the press is an Irish press, and the author herself is also Irish, and so I thought that was kind of cool. This is an adult high fantasy that I know has a lot of queer rep in it. From the synopsis, it sounds like there's a lot of political intrigue, which I am super excited about, as well as I believe a female-female romance, but I also think there are other queer characters in the story. I know that Justine from I Should Read That really enjoyed this book. She gave it 5 stars, and I had already kind of had my eye on it, but after I saw her rave review, it definitely bumped it up my list. Also, Goodreads does list this book as being the first book in a series, but on Goodreads, in the section where the author can answer questions, she has stated that this is technically a standalone, but that she has ideas for other books in this world. If you don't know, I try to avoid starting series that aren't completed just because I hate the wait between sequels, and I feel like I enjoy books less when I have to wait a year between them. So I'm really glad that she clarified that. Next, I want to talk about A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow, and this is coming out on June 2nd from Torteen. This is one of the books that I heard about from the Social Distancing Book Fest. I thought the author, Bethany C. Morrow, sounded really interesting when she talked about this book and how it came to be. This is a YA fantasy, and it's about sirens. How cool is that? We definitely don't get enough siren stories out there, and I have to admit I haven't read very many of them. It does seem to be a little bit like an urban fantasy, or like a contemporary fantasy, I think is probably the more correct term, because I think it takes place in Portland. Next, I have My Calamity Jane. This is by the Lady Janies, which is a team of 3 different authors. It's Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows. It comes out on June 2nd. I just realized I've been using not past tense to talk about these. Obviously, like I said, it is June 16th right now, so these books are already out. But it came out from Harper Teen. This is actually the third book in a series, but they're all standalone stories. So these authors write stories all about famous Janes. That's why the series is called The Lady Janies. And I've read the prior two, and I enjoyed them. I really enjoyed the first one. The second one I enjoyed but didn't love as much, and I'm very interested to see what I'm going to think of this third one. So this third one is about Calamity Jane. And something to keep in mind with these books is they're written to be funny, so they're kind of like comedy books. They're part historical fiction because they're based on historical figures named Jane, but they always have some sort of magical element to them, and they're also meant to be funny. I am very excited to see what their take on Calamity Jane is. Next, I have A Song of Wraith and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown, and this also came out on June 2nd from Bowser and Bray. This is another book that I heard about from the Social Distancing Book Fest, and I thought that it sounded really interesting. I'm just going to read the first paragraph in the synopsis. It says, the first in a fantasy duology inspired by West African folklore, in which a grieving crown princess and a desperate refugee find themselves on a collision course to murder each other despite their growing attraction. I have read one African-inspired fantasy before, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it quite as much as I wanted to, and I'm really hoping to love this one. Next, I have Rebel Spy by Veronica Rossi, which is coming out on June 23rd from Delacorte Press. I've read one book by Veronica Rossi before. It was the first book in the Under the Never Sky series, and I enjoyed that, and I actually plan to reread that book in the near future and continue on and finish the series, but that is a YA science fiction book. This one, instead, is a YA historical fiction, and I'm really excited about this plot. So the beginning of the synopsis says, a reimagining of the story behind Agent 355, a New York society girl and a spy for George Washington during the Revolutionary War. Perfect for fans of Tatiana de Rosnay's Sarah's Key and the novels of Julie Berry. I haven't read either of those authors before, but I'm very excited about this spy for George Washington part of it. Some of you might have been around and remember when, was it last summer or last fall? I think it was last summer. Sometime last year, I binge watched the show Turn. It's an AMC show, or at least it was. I think it was on Netflix or something, Hulu maybe. Anyways, I binge watched it, and that show was about George Washington's spy ring, and I just thought it was fascinating, and I always told myself I would read a nonfiction book about those people because that show was based on a nonfiction book, but of course I haven't done that yet. That show just made me realize that I really like stories about spies, and I haven't read or watched enough stories about spies. I need more of that in my life, and so I'm excited about this one by Veronica Rossi. Next, I want to talk about The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Zen Cho. This is an adult fantasy novella. It's only 176 pages. It's coming out on June 23rd from Tor.com. First of all, I think this cover is gorgeous, but also, if you couldn't tell, this is like an Asian-inspired fantasy, which is something that always attracts me. From the synopsis, it sounds like there's the found family trope, which is one of my favorite tropes, and it's about a bandit and this eclectic group of thieves called the Order of the Pure Moon. And all of that sounds like a combination that I would enjoy. Next, I want to talk about Sisters of Sword and Song by Rebecca Ross. This is also coming out on June 23rd from Harper Teen. I actually have a physical advanced reader copy of this. I picked it up at the North Texas Teen Book Festival when I went earlier this year. I haven't started it yet, but it's very high on my TBR, and you should be hearing my thoughts about it in the next month or two. So this is the same author as The Queen's Rising, which I haven't read, but I am familiar with the title. I've heard of it and heard some good things about it. Oh, this is a YA fantasy. Let me just read the very first paragraph of the synopsis. It says, from the author of The Queen's Rising comes a thrilling YA standalone fantasy about the unbreakable bond between sisters. Perfect for fans of Ember in the Ashes, Sky in the Deep, and Court of Fives. The only one out of those comps that I've read is Ember in the Ashes, which I absolutely love. Oh, that's not true. I've read Sky in the Deep, and I thought it was just okay. But I haven't read Court of Fives. Either way, I love reading books about sisters and sister bonds, and based on the title, I think there might be some sort of musical element, which I typically enjoy in books. Okay, the last book that I have for June is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I have yet to read a Silvia Moreno Garcia book, but I do have her most recent release out from the library right now, so I'm hoping to get to that sometime in the summer. So from the synopsis, this is described as a terrifying twist on classic Gothic horror, which I haven't read a lot of Gothic horror, but I find that very intriguing, and it's set in Mexico in the 1950s, which I think is not a setting that I have read a lot from. I don't want to say it's not like a typical setting because I'm sure there are a lot of books out there set in that time period and in that city, but I'm just not familiar with them. I've just heard so much about this author and I really want to try some of her works, hopefully starting with Gods of Jade and Shadow since that's the one I have out from my library right now, but I had to include this on my anticipated releases list. Okay, finally getting into July. The first book that is on my list from July is Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay. This is coming out on July 7th from William and Morrow. And I was a little hesitant to put this on my list because I haven't had the best track record with Paul Tremblay, but the plot of this book sounds up my alley. Basically, this is a pandemic story. It's about a virus outbreak. A virus that is sort of similar to rabies and causes people to lose their minds, and they're driven to bite and infect other people. So it sounds kind of like a zombie virus, but my friend Rachel from the Shades of Orange, she's already read this and said that there are multiple times in the book where the characters keep saying that this is not a zombie outbreak. So I think it's a bit of a play on zombies. My biggest issue that I've had with Paul Tremblay in the past is that he's kind of known for having open endings, and I don't love open endings. So that's the thing that I'm the most nervous about for this book, but I feel like I can't pass up on a virus outbreak that is similar to zombies but not zombies. It just sounds so up my alley that I feel like I'm going to at least give it a try, but we shall see. Next, I have Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power, coming out on July 7th from Delacorte Press. Some of you might be surprised that I put this on my list because this author's debut novel, Wilder Girls, I gave 2 stars and I did not like. But I was a bit of an unpopular opinion on Wilder Girls. A lot of people really like that book, and while I had multiple issues with that one, the biggest problem that I had was the way that it ended. So I'm definitely not going to read Burn Our Bodies Down right away. I kind of want to see how people are taking it, and if anybody says that they don't like the ending or that it has like a really open ending the way Wilder Girls did. So this is a YA mystery story, although I think it kind of leans horror, similar to how Wilder Girls kind of leaned horror. The first paragraph of the synopsis says, from the author of the New York Times bestseller Wilder Girls comes a new twisty thriller about a girl whose past has always been a mystery until she decides to return to her mother's hometown, where history has a tendency to repeat itself. I'm primarily interested in this because of the author. I want to give her another shot and see if I like this one more than I liked Wilder Girls, or didn't like Wilder Girls. Next, I have The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is coming out on July 21st from Ace. This is another book that I heard about from the Social Distancing Book Fest. I thought that the things the author said about her journey to writing this book were really interesting, and after hearing her talk about it, I immediately put this book on my anticipated releases list. So this is a YA fantasy that also leans a little bit horror. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, the author said that she took some inspirations from the Salem witch trials. The very first bit of the synopsis says, a woman living in a rigid, puritanical society discovers dark powers within herself in this stunning feminist fantasy debut. And also the author, description on Goodreads says, Alexis Henderson is a speculative fiction writer with a penchant for dark fantasy, witchcraft, and cosmic horror. And that just sounds like right up my alley. I actually do have an advanced reader copy of this. I was able to get one from NetGalley, and I'm very excited to read this, so stay tuned for my thoughts on it. Next on my list, I have Lobizona by Romina Garber. A few people that I follow have given this book 5 stars with glowing reviews, and that's kind of what got it on my radar. This is another contemporary fantasy, and it takes place in Miami. And it touches on issues of like immigration while also incorporating a fantastical element. The main character in the story is an undocumented immigrant who is running from her father's Argentine crime family. And on top of that, it sounds like there is an element of witches and werewolves in the story, and I find that very intriguing. Next, I want to talk about Star Daughter by Sveta Thakrar. This is coming out on August. We finally move on to August. August 11th from Harper Teen. This is a YA fantasy debut, and the first paragraph of the synopsis really caught my eye. It says, "This gorgeously imagined YA debut blends shades of Neil Gaiman's Stardust and a breathtaking landscape of Hindu mythology into a radiant contemporary fantasy." And I haven't read a lot of fantasies that have any sort of Hindu inspirations, and so when I saw that, I was immediately intrigued. Also, the synopsis ends with, "Brimming with celestial intrigue, this sparkling YA debut is perfect for fans of Roshni Chokshi and Laini Taylor." And you guys know that I love Laini Taylor. Next, I have Ray Bearer by Jordan Ifueko, which is coming out on August 18th from Amulet Books. This is a YA fantasy, and it's another one that I heard about from the Social Distancing Book Fest. I thought the author sounded really interesting, and I just really liked hearing what they had to say about their journey in writing this book. And after I watched them speak on the panel, I immediately went and added this book to my anticipated releases list. The little tagline says, "Nothing is more important than loyalty. But what if you've sworn to protect the one you were born to destroy?" A couple people that I follow have already read this book and really enjoyed it, given it like 4.5 and 5 stars. So I am really excited to see what people think of this one. Oh, and the author is Black, and I believe that the story has some African inspirations. I think Nigerian specifically. All right, and that brings us to the last book on my list. I have Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho. This is actually a sequel. It's the second book in the Kumio series. I read the first book last year when it came out. I had an advanced reader copy of that one. I don't have an advanced reader copy of this one, at least not as of now, but I am planning to read it. It comes out on August 18th from G.P. Putnam's Sons Books for Young Readers. This is a contemporary fantasy that is set in Seoul in Korea, or at least the first one was set in Seoul. And the main character, Mi-young, is what's called a gumyo, which is kind of like a werewolf, but not really, and it's a human who turns into like a 9-tailed fox. I really enjoyed the Korean aspects of the first book. There's a lot of really yummy Korean food described, but I also really enjoyed the Korean culture because it takes place in Korea, and just like the Korean mythology. Being half Korean myself, I just really enjoy seeing those things in the books that I read. So I am very excited to continue on in this series and see where Mi-young and Chi-yoon, the other main character from the first book, where they go in this one. Alright guys, those are 15 books that are coming out in the next 3 months, some that have already come out in June, that I am excited about and I wanted to put on your radar. Let me know down in the comment section what books coming out in June, July, and August that you are most excited for, or let me know what you thought of some of my picks. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye. About a book about a book that's about someone who. Next, I want to talk about The Order of the Pure Moon. Let me know down below. Let me know in the comment section which book coming out.